Yo, 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 Auntie, how are you? What's up? Surely you mean Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh? Yeah, that. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yo, yo, how you doing? Well, I can see that some people are getting very much into all this growing up business here, huh? You're all grown up. Look at you. Not the Ali I knew. Please don't change so much, Ali. Well, Auntie, what can I do? You know, I see all these songs and rappers and music and all these video games, and I've been noticing a lot of things around me. Beautiful, pretty things, you know? And I feel like being bad sometimes, and I know that I'm not supposed to, but it's like there's some part of me saying, do it, do it, do it, do it. And then I'm like, my mind's like, no, 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 no. And my heart's like, do it, do it, do it. And then I'm like, what do I do? And I feel like, Yeah, seems like there's some kind of internal fight going on in your heart, huh? Let me just stuff this thing in here so it doesn't bother you. But this internal fight that you're talking about, Ali, is actually your nafs trying to persuade you and dissuade you and lead you astray. Nafs? What's nafs? I don't know what. You know, sometimes I wonder if what do you think? What's going on? You're talking to yourself? Yeah, sometimes I talk to myself. Yeah, that's what the nafs is all about. It's sometimes when we talk to ourselves, you wonder, who am I talking to? The nafs is this part inside of us that seems like another person that we're talking to. Yeah, that's right. This happens. I feel like I'm talking to someone. I'm like, Ali, don't do it, man. Don't do it. I'm like, yeah, but what? You know, that kind of stuff going on in my heart and my mind and my soul. That's my nafs. Well, it's your soul. This thing inside you that that's the real you. Your body is just a covering, right? But the person, the real Ali is inside. It's this thing that you can't see, but it feels and it thinks and it questions. And when you're talking about this part of you that makes you want to do bad things and wants makes you get carried away, that's actually the very much the nafs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in fact in the Holy Quran. In Surah 12. Let me show you that. I have it here somewhere. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this nafsul amara, it's called. This is the base part of ourselves that wants to do all sorts of things. Let me show that to you.
وما أبرئ نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي إن ربي غفور رحيم.
So actually, this is Surah Yusuf, in which Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam talks about this nafs, and he says that surely this part of our soul, the nafsul amara, it makes us do evil things. It's prone to evil. So the nafsul amara is the lowest part of our soul, and our soul can elevate. You can become a better person, and this base part of you, the lowest part of you, can get better and better and better. And that's what we are really trying to do in our lives, to control this nafs of ours. And Imam Ali alayhi salam has said, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam has also talked about this and said that your nafs should be under your control. Don't let your nafs tell you what to do. You tell it what to do. And so you know how this part of you that wants you to listen to music and look at things and do things that you know are bad, your mind is telling you something, your heart is telling you something else. There's a part of our nafs that is dictated by our desires. This is why Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam tells Zuleika that this is that nafs, this part of you that is prone to evil. So the nafs amara, as the Quran has told us, is that part of our nafs that is the most childish part of our nafs. Yeah. It's this part of me that's like a baby. It's like, I want this, and take it and just snatch it away and beat this person up because they're driving you nuts, and just say these dirty words and swear and just be bad. That's my nafsul amara? Yes, absolutely. That's the part of your nafs that befriends actually shaitan. Shaitan wants to become friends with this very childish form of ours, which is dictated by desires. It's innocent, it's uninformed, it doesn't know any better, it's very primitive, and it's the worst category of the nafs because it doesn't think, it just wants to do. And what it wants to do is often sinful and rude and incorrect, because shaitan sees it as the very vulnerable part of our soul. And so we have to be very careful about this. Imam Ali alayhi salam has said that the most helpless person is the one who is helpless in reforming his self, his nafs. He doesn't work on improving his nafs. Have you known people like this in your life that you know that they're just getting carried away? Yeah. My friends, they have some older brothers like that. Like, they're so bad. Oh my God, the things they do, auntie, I can't even tell you. And they're so rude to their parents, and they don't even go to school. They keep skipping class, and sometimes they steal, they break things, they vandalize. They're really bad dudes, man. I mean, sometimes I look up to them because I think they're cool, but then when I look closely, I'm like, that's not cool, man. That's just getting yourself into trouble. That's just stupid. That's gonna get you put in jail. What a loser. But then I don't know what's wrong with these guys. They're so old and yet they're doing this. Yes, exactly. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he in Dua Kumail tells us about this, when he says, Zalamtu nafsi, my soul, my nafs has done dhulm on me. It has made me do things that were wrong. And so that's why we have to really, really work at improving ourselves, because otherwise we are going to head for disaster. And as the soul becomes refined and we are working on it, remember, the helpless person who doesn't work on that. But we're not helpless, we're strong. We don't let our nafs tell us what to do. We're going to tell it what to do. The soul needs to become refined and disciplined when it comes to how to deal with family, how to deal with the community, how to deal with your friends, your schoolmates, your office colleagues when you grow up, the global village. All these things require us to elevate ourselves. Because remember, the Holy Prophet ﷺ has said that I've been sent to elevate the good conduct. And often when we see people who are really working at making themselves better, have you seen those kind of people who you think should really act badly, but they've acted so well? Yeah, I know who you're talking about. There's some people I've seen at the mosque even, and like, they're my age and they don't run around. They don't do all these bad things. And some of us are like, take a smoke. Why don't you just try? And they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And yeah, a lot of people laugh at them because they act like goody two-shoes and all that. It's like holier than thou. But actually, they're pretty good. That's not holier than thou. That's just being sane. Who wants to start smoking? It's so bad. It makes you stink, and it's bad for you too. You're going to get lung cancer. But those guys, they seem to have a control of themselves, because all of us want to try a little bit, We want to be bad and do all those bad things. But some people, I don't know, you just can't make them do bad things. They're just so strong. Yes, and those are the people who have allowed their nafsul amara to be controlled by themselves. What they've done is they have made another part of their nafs more strong. Now see, as we know, nafsul amara is the lowest, most childish, primitive, and prone to evil part of our soul. But then there is something called the nafsul lawama. And the nafsul lawama, the Holy Quran talks about the nafsul lawama. it is mentioned in Surah Al-Qiyamah. Let's look at this. It's the second ayah of Surah Al-Qiyamah.
ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة.
And I swear by the reproaching soul to the certainty of resurrection.
So what that means is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Holy Quran that this is inside us. The nafsul ammara, and then there's also the nafsul lawama. And the nafsul lawama is that reproaching, scolding part of ourselves. It's what you would say, your conscience that bites you. Have you ever felt that, Ali? Yeah, like there are times when I've done bad things and then I feel so bad. I'm like, why did I do that? And I feel a lot of guilt, and especially when I've lied sometimes. I'm like, why did I do that? I didn't even have to lie, and now look, I have to tell another lie and another lie and another lie. But now I'm gotten better, Auntie. I tell myself, I scold myself. I talk to myself. I'm like, that was dumb. Don't do it again. And next time, do not skip class so that you get an F. And, you're going to work at this, and you're going to be a big man someday and earn money. And you don't want to end up in jail, and you don't want to get in trouble at the mosque with the teachers at madrasa and all that stuff. No. You want to be good. You want just to get through life smoothly and let all those aunties go, oh, what a good little beta, mashallah. What a good boy. What a good boy. I want to be that kid. Yes, those aunties are actually quite nice because they see the good things in us and they praise us. I mean, we're lucky these aunties praise us. You are making fun of them, aren't you? But you shouldn't. They're the nice aunties who take a moment to say, what a good boy. I mean, usually people are always telling us how bad we are, right? And telling us off. So we should be grateful for those aunties who say, what a good boy. And, sixth Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam was once with his companions, and they were, it was a very beautiful cloudless night. So when there's no clouds, what do you see in the sky if it's nighttime? If there's darkness and no clouds, stars? Yes, they could see the stars and the planets and the moon. Everything was shining so brightly. And when they were looking up, the companions said, Ya Abu Abdullah, look how beautiful is the sky and how radiant are the stars and the planets. Have you been able to ever see that, Ali? Yeah. Sometimes we, do astronomy. We look up at the sky and you can see like the Milky Way, and you can see Venus, and I love looking up at the stars. I love to learn about all the planets and everything. It's really amazing stuff up there. You know how many galaxies there are, Auntie? There's so many that we can't even... Do you know about black holes and supernovas and all that? Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I love all that too. And that's exactly what the sixth Imam, he knew all these things. He knew all these sciences, and he was to teach people and his students about all this. But he told his companion, he said, how you can see all these beautiful planets and the stars. They didn't even have a telescope, but he was pointing it out all to them. And he says, that's what you say when you look up at the sky. But do you know that the beings of the sky are also looking at you right now and are impressed with you? Why are they impressed with us? That's exactly what the companions asked. And he said, do you know that the great angels, Jibrail, Mikael, Israfil, the angel of death, they are all looking at the earth, and they see you and your brothers sitting on the earth. In your radiance, your good akhlaq, your piety, it creates a nur on your face. Your whole being is shining so much that the people in the heavens can see you right now. And they find it even more beautiful than you finding them beautiful. So just like you have remarked how beautiful they are, they're remarking, looking at you, saying, how beautiful is the radiance of the believers, the mu'min. Whoa! You know what? I remember when I was learning about Bibi Fatima Zahra, Salamullah alayha, that when she would pray, that the stars in the sky would all be told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all the planets, that the light that they have is from her worship, that she's so good, her light lights up the skies. So the people in the heavens, the angels and all of them, are impressed with the people of the earth because they're shining, not because they just are stars and moons and planets, but they're shining because they're good people, because they have improved their souls, their nafs. Well, Ali, you are a very quick learner indeed. I want to show you about that other part of the nafs. This is the third part of the nafs. So we've learned about the nafsul lawama. Which was the first one? Nafsul Ammara. You're really smart, Ali. You've got brains, and when you're putting your brains to good things, look at you. You're amazing. Don't waste your time on perfecting arts that are full of haram in them. Learning how to dance and learning how to sing and play musical instruments. These are not going to get us into heaven. What will make the stars be impressed with us is our good conduct and the good things that we do. So Nafsul Amara, Nafsul Lawama, which kind of soul is that? That's the scolding self. The little one is the baby, right? It tells me what to do and says, I want this. And it does dhulm on me, right? It oppresses me, tells me it leads me astray because it's got friends with shaitan. But the second one scolds me and says, don't do that. It's like the scolding auntie at the mosque, right? Yes. And then the third one is the nafsul mutmainna. And now that soul is the soul that is at peace. It's the righteous soul. It's the one that has attained the highest level of taqwa. And piety has made it feel content. Doesn't want anything. It's not like the nafsul amara that wants to do bad things. This is the part of the soul that's happy by being good. Being good has become a habit, and also being good is what gives it satisfaction. And when it's satisfied like that, it is satisfied with God, and God is satisfied with it. And when that type of soul goes up to the heavens, that's the soul that gets heaven. Now let us look at this ayah, which is in Surah Fajr, a very famous ayah. You have often heard it in the majlis, and we'll ask you if you've ever heard this. Let's see it.
يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة.
To the righteous it will be said, O reassured soul,
ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية.
return to your Lord, well pleased and pleasing to Him,
فادخلي في عبادي.
and enter among my righteous servants,
وادخلي جنتي.
and enter my paradise.
Subhanallah. Have you recognized this ayah at all? Majlis Hussein. Yeah, this is the ayah that is heard when Imam Hussein alayhi salam gives his life for Islam, and he hears it all around him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him, O soul that is at peace, who has pleased its Lord, and its Lord is pleased with it, and he is pleased with his Lord, and come to my paradise. Come back to me, O Hussein. Yes, mashallah Ali, exactly. And that's the highest level of taqwa and piety that we want to attain, just like Imam Hussein alayhi salam did, and all the Imams and the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those who have attained the highest level of taqwa and have pleased Allah, Allah is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Allah, and they are called to the heavens and invited to heaven, and made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very, very pleased indeed. Let's all work on our nafs, right, Ali? And try to get those two levels of nafs working hard, the nafsul lawama, scolding the nafsul amara, so that we can be the nafsul Mutma'inna. Yay, yo, let's do it, auntie. Let's get going. And I think it's time to pray, so I'm off so that I can make myself the best that I can be. MashaAllah. Good job. I love that. And we'll see you again very soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope everybody is doing well, and if we're ready for today's session, let's have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Last day we spoke about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and we said Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is primarily known to us as Shias as the man who stood on the day of Ashura in front of injustice, defended himself, defended his religion, defended his family, and ultimately sacrificed himself for what he believed. And so Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in our mind lives on as this individual that stood up when everyone else sat down, where he rose while everyone else stayed in their places and did not move. This is only one portion of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's life, and so we said to analyze the other portion, the majority of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's life really does speak to us and tells us who Abu Abdullah alayhi salam truly was, tells us of the character of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And so we said Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gave Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam a quality of his, and that is generosity. Ahsantum. The generosity of Rasulullah was given to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, while the aura of control or dominance of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was given to Imam al-Hasan. And we gave many examples of how Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam presented this quality and how this quality came to define Abi Abdullah alayhi salamullah. And we gave examples in his life before Ashura, before the incident of Karbala and the revolution itself, of how Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would see others being stingy, but then would rise to the occasion and show how Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam were the most generous of all the people. Today, my brothers and sisters, we're going to talk about Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salamullah. The son of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam that ultimately took the reins of Imamah, the responsibilities of Imamah after his father. Yes, he was there on the day of Ashura, and after the day of Ashura, his stand was known. And if it wasn't for the stand of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, we would not have Ashura, we would not have Karbala. Not that it would not have occurred, rather, the reality of what happened on that day would not have come to us. Why? Because we say Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam played the role of the messenger, played the role of the person who was spreading Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's message. Imagine you have a message and you have a stand and you take that stand and you are not able to spread that message. Then what's the point of the message in the first place? Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam took that message and spread it. He took that message and spread it, and that's why we have it today. But like Imam al-Hussein, similar to Imam al-Hussein, we don't know much about Imam al-Sajjad other than his stand on the day of Ashura and after the day of Ashura. As in, if I tell you, give me an instance from the life of Imam al-Sajjad that showed his bravery, other than his stand on the day of Ashura, some of us will be perplexed. Some of us will be confused. Maybe we may not be able to give an example. Give me an example of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam's clemency, his generosity. Give me a story that happened, something that happened to Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam after Ashura that's not necessarily linked to Ashura, something that you may not have heard in the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. A lot of us will be a little bit confused and may not know what to answer. So today, my brothers and sisters, that's exactly what we are going to do. But we're going to analyze one aspect of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam's personality, and that is his clemency, his leniency, and how he presented that and showed that after the entire world was against Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, on that day, the day of Ashura, and after the day of Ashura. We're going to analyze and see, how did Imam al-Sajjad conduct himself with those that are out to get him, with those that are out to destroy him and the message that he was trying to spread. We will ask these questions and hopefully answer them with a loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad from you. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We're going to analyze the characteristic of clemency. But before we analyze the characteristic and how it more or less applied to Imam Sajjad, let's know what it means. Clemency, my brothers and sisters, is mercy along with leniency. Al-Jahiz, one of the scholars, he defines clemency as a person in a state where they are able to take revenge out of anger, but they choose not to. So for example, if you came up to me and you did something wrong to me, and later on, or in the same instance, I'm able to take revenge, and my anger is pushing me to take revenge and hurt you back, and I choose not to. Rather, I choose to do something good. Instead, I'm considered to be someone who has clemency. I'm exercising clemency. So it's mercy with leniency. With leniency. You find that Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam in his life showed this quality, presented it in many different occasions. Why? Let me give you a backstory. Because it's said after Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's revolution, it's not like everybody became Shia. To us, to some people, we tend to think that after Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's revolution, everyone just became Shia. No. People woke up to the reality that they were living in. They saw the reality that they were living in. They understood Yazid to be a tyrant. They understood that those that came after Yazid were tyrants. This understanding was clear to them. And they knew the person that was going to be sitting in the reins of the Khilafah or sitting in the chair of Khilafah had to have piety. They understood these things. They didn't revolt. They didn't stand against Yazid or stand against Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, for example, or Al-Walid, whoever it may be. They didn't stand up against them. But ultimately, they knew that the person that was going to sit in the place of the Khilafah had to have qualities that enabled them to make such decisions in crucial times and to lead the Muslimin. They have to have the qualities. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam showed that. And ultimately, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam made it clear to them where the truth was and where the falsehood was. What they did after was on them. Now, they stayed sitting, they rose, that's up to them. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam's revolution was not merely political, it was ideological. The people did not change and become Shias. No, but they understood where the falsehood was, and who was on the falsehood, or who was with the falsehood, and who was with the truth. They understood this. And so you find that even in the time of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, there were enemies to Imam al-Sajjad. Not just enemies. There was a plan, a conspiracy to pressure Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam in every which way possible, to hurt him, to put people in power just so they can hurt Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam and keep that fire that was within Imam al-Sajjad sort of burning only within him and not allow that fire to burn with others so a revolution can occur once again. And so they pressured Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam and they tried to put out the flame of Allah. But we know the flame of Allah, the nur of Allah is never to be put out. And so Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam had many people that were trying to hurt him. Many people that would stand against him. And so he had more opportunity to exercise clemency because he had more opposition. And so you find Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, even to the governor of Medina that used to hurt him purposefully. When that governor was stripped from his role, you found Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam not seeking revenge. The opposite. Let me tell you what happened. Listen. After the killing of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, there was a governor in Medina. His name was Ismail ibn Hisham al-Makhzumi. Ismail ibn Hisham al-Makhzumi. This man had malice and hate towards Ahl al-Bayt, specifically to Imam al-Sajjad. He would step on the pulpits, get up onto the pulpits, and swear at Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam, or Amir al-Mu'mineen specifically, just so he can have the rulers down in Damascus be happy with him and gain some sort of closeness to them. When al-Walid ibn Abd al-Malik became the Khalifa, he fired Ismail ibn Hisham. Why? Because there was some internal conflicts between them, personal conflict between them, and so he fired him. And not just this, he wanted to humiliate Ismail ibn Hisham. So he put Ismail ibn Hisham on display in front of everyone. And he told everyone that if Ismail ibn Hisham has taken anything from you, has taken any of your rights, now is the time to take it back. If he hurt you, if he hit you, if he tortured you, if he imprisoned you, put you in jail, whatever it may be that he did to you, now is the time for you to take back that right. You want to hit him, you want to swear at him, you want to throw something at him, now is the time. Ismail, he says, I fear no one except Hussein ibn Ali. Why? Because as we know, he was hurting the Imam, he was pressuring the Imam, he was doing everything that he could possibly do to hurt the Imam. And so he said, I don't fear anyone except Hussein ibn Ali. And I know, if al-Hussein ibn Ali comes back to take his right from me, the people will follow him. The people were not Shia. They were not Shias. Or the majority of them at the very least were not Shias. But they respected the Imam and knew the truth was with the Imam. And so what the Imam alayhi salam did, they will follow. The Imam alayhi salam commands his companions. He says to them, don't hurt the man. Don't insult the man. Don't do anything to this man. Leave him. The Imam alayhi salam comes to Ismail and he says to him, I saw what happened to you. Essentially, I saw your fall from grace. And I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to come and tell you what you love. I want to tell you something good. Give you goodness after you've given me evil and you've given me pain. I'm going to take that pain and turn it into good and give it right back. Ismail looks at the Imam and he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows where to put his message and to who to entrust that message with. The Imam alayhi salam was able to take revenge, but he didn't. The Imam alayhi salam was able to take that person that's been making his life a living hell and to take revenge on that person, to show this person for what he truly is. But he didn't. The Imam alayhi salam forgave him. And not just forgave him, was good to that man. The Imam on countless occasions would do the same. Another narration says, a man came to the Imam and began swearing at him, began accusing the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam alayhi salam looked at him and he said, if I actually have this problem, if what you are accusing me of is true, then I ask Allah Ta'ala to forgive me. And if you're lying, then I ask Allah Ta'ala to forgive you. This man was embarrassed, astonished, that I'm sitting and accusing this man. I'm lying against this man. And instead of getting angry and having one of his companions, one of his people attack me or say something back to me, he prays for me. He prays that Allah Ta'ala forgives me. These are our Imams alayhimus salam. And they teach us something. Here's the lesson. Let me tell you the lesson, my brothers and sisters. Is that if you are someone of true morals, of values, of ethics, if someone throws negativity at you, you're not to throw negativity back at them. If someone is to hurl insults at you, and you are a true follower of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam, and you have the morals of Ahl al-Bayt alayhimus salam, you don't hurl that negativity back. Because all that does is rile the other person up so that they can hurl negativity back. And it's just a ping pong match. Negativity back and forth. But right when you take that negativity and change it into something positive and present it to that person, you are going to do one of two things. Either A, you're going to embarrass that person, or B, you're going to gain that person. You're going to gain this person. And so you find that the Imam alayhi salam gained so many followers, or at least people that respected and loved him, by merely taking that negativity that was coming towards him, flipping it around into positivity for himself and for the person in front of him, for the opposition. Whether that opposition, my brothers and sisters, is a friend or an enemy or a person of authority, a parent, whoever it may be, they don't have to be bad to hurl negativity at you. No, negativity is just something that naturally human beings hurl at each other. It's a natural inclination we have. We hurl positivity sometimes and negativity other times. Take that negativity, whatever it may be, change it into positivity and give it right back. And give it right back. Even if, in the moment, the only positive thing that you can do or say is to ignore. In a hadith, a man swears at Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. The Imam alayhi salam turns away and walks. Turns and walks away. The man says, I mean you. I mean you. And the Imam alayhi salam responds and says to him, what? And I still forgive you. It says the man bursts into anger. The Imam alayhi salam put him in his place without saying a word to him. Either you embarrass the person or you bring them closer to you. And ultimately what they choose to do after that is on them, not on you anymore. This is what we learned from Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam and from all of our Imams alayhim jami'an salamullah. Let's end off today's session with a loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Influence by Robert Cialdini is the New York Times bestseller, which is highly acclaimed. It's been recommended by everyone from Charlie Munger, the right-hand man of Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway, all the way to Guy Kawasaki from Apple, and a whole slew of individuals in between. It's a book that looks into the inner workings of the mind and how people are persuaded or influenced. And this is really important to understand because there may be techniques that people use on us that we should be mindful and understand. The author also says it's very important to understand these because it can help prevent you from being manipulated by others. These are techniques or sort of shortcuts that our minds make, and if we don't understand them and don't recognize them, we can be a target of them, if you will. The other argument that is to be made here is that our minds have certain conditions that allow them to be such that they make the wrong decisions or come to the wrong conclusions because of shortcuts. The author gives the example here of turkey birds. The turkey bird mother actually responds to any animal that will make a chirp chirp sound. Whether it's a baby turkey or it may even be a predator that makes this sound, it will respond. And the author further goes and says that we think, or we may think, that we are different than turkey bird mothers, but in reality we may not be that different. Our minds make these shortcuts the same way that turkey bird mothers make many shortcuts as well. And the author says it's important to understand this so that we can protect ourselves and understand when these shortcuts are happening in our mind so that no one can take advantage of us. If you look around in our world, you'll find these shortcuts everywhere that the mind makes. In this book, we're going to be highlighting a few of them, 6 of them in particular, that the author says are some of the most common and some of the most powerful shortcuts that our mind makes. Understand them and know when they're being used on you. And also, furthermore, understand that if you are going to use any of these techniques, you need to make sure that you are ethical and you are taking the proper ethical precautions, the author argues. Another further example of this is souvenir shops. Souvenir shops, interestingly, the author cites, when they want to sell a product that is not selling, one of the first things that they do is they raise the price, which you would think is counterintuitive. Why would they raise the price to something that's not selling? The author says one of the #1 indicators of quality to the consumer is price. And so when they raise the price, the individual thinks that the product is automatically good, when in reality, that is not necessarily the case. In fact, it may be very different. The quality may be poor, yet because the price is expensive, we think that it is a quality product. This is just one of the known shortcuts that our minds make in order to make decisions more effectively, recognize it, and be cognizant of it so you can make better decisions. Keeping all this in mind, let's dive right in. The first major idea of the book is the law of reciprocity. That is, we as human beings, we have a need to want to return favors. When someone does something nice to us, when someone is caring to us, when someone gives us a gift, we feel a psychological burden to return and repay this gift. And sometimes we'll do this at a level that may not even make sense. What level does this go to? the author says this goes up to the country level. He gives the example of Ethiopia in the 1980s. In the 1980s, Ethiopia was suffering from a very difficult time, especially in the middle of the 1980s. And yet during this difficult time, Ethiopia came forward and gave a donation and gave funds and money to Mexico. Why would a country like Ethiopia, which was suffering itself at this time, actually take out money from its shortage and give it towards Mexico? Well, it turns out that in 1935, roughly 50 years earlier, Mexico had helped Ethiopia when it was suffering. And therefore, Ethiopia felt such a strong need to give the repayment back towards Mexico, even when it was suffering itself. This takes place at the national country level, the author argues, and it also takes place at the individual level. He cites another example. The Hare Krishna group on university campuses in the United States, they would give flowers or roses to passers-by just for free. And the result was that these individuals would give donations generously to the Hare Krishna group. The author further says that they had no need for these flowers, and which was proved by the fact that after a few yards, they would dispose of these flowers in the bin. It was just the law of reciprocity that forced the individuals to give, whether they realized it or not. In order to protect yourself from the law of reciprocity when it's being used on yourself, the author argues that you should consider and ask, do you genuinely think that this person is giving you this gift genuinely, that they really mean it, or do they have an ulterior motive behind this? Are they trying to get something out of you? Keep that in mind. Major idea number 2, scarcity. Scarcity is one of the strongest and most powerful catalysts for buying in our world. This technique is used and is tremendously effective. An example of this is one that you all know, an open auction, where people begin to bid amongst each other in order to pay the highest price. This is something that triggers the mechanism of shortcut and irrationality in the brain and makes you pay a lot more than you would otherwise if you were not in an open air bidding auction. An example that the author cites of this is the ABC Media House in the United States, the TV channel, that they paid $3.3 million to air a film on their station. Why did they do this? In fact, when the film actually aired, they netted a $1 million loss on the airing of this film. And all the other houses, the production house and all the other stations, the channels, were very happy that they did not win this bid because ABC lost money. In fact, ABC said that they will never participate in an open air auction on any film again, because they knew from that point that it was irrationality and scarcity that was driving them to buy this film for such a high price for the time, because other people were bidding on this same movie. This is exactly what happens, and this is how scarcity is triggered in our minds. The author argues further that in order to protect yourself from this technique, you should ask yourself, do you really want the underlying product or service that you're bidding for? Or is it that the scarcity and you thinking that other people want it as well is forcing you to buy it? The author even further goes on and says that one of the best ways to make something desirable and wanted by people is to ban it. When you ban something, the author argues from the perspective of psychology, it adds to the value of that thing. He says when you censor something, it becomes more valuable in the minds of the audience. He further goes on and says the example of judges in law cases. When there is a situation where, for example, if a plaintiff or an individual in a case has insurance or a defendant has insurance, the jury is often told by the judge, disregard whether or not the individual had insurance. Yet, when that information is told to be disregarded, juries take that information at a scientific level more seriously and actually take it on board because it's been censored. You cannot forget it. Furthermore, the author cites an interesting example in Dade County in the United States where phosphate detergents were banned. When they were banned, it increased the desire for people to actually have these detergent much more, to the extent that they went out of their way to purchase it. This is called the Romeo and Juliet effect, according to the author. The Romeo and Juliet effect basically states that when something is not attainable, when something is banned, when something is censored, it makes it more desirable, and in the minds of individuals, they want that product more. Major idea number 3, consistency. We as human beings, the author argues, have a need and a want and a desire for consistency. And one of the ways that this manifests itself is when in an open air forum, such as at the beach, if an individual asks a stranger, "Can you please look after my things?" and that stranger publicly says, "Yes, I will look after these for you," this triggers in the mind a commitment to honor what we said in public. And therefore, the author, Dr. Robert Cialdini, argues that people actually go out of their way to the extent that they get up and run after people who try to steal things from complete strangers, only because they made a public commitment and they want consistency. And there's numerous other research that actually backs this up and shows us that when we make a commitment on a public level to an individual, we want to keep that commitment and we don't want to be seen as someone who is going back on our word. This technique is used by many salesmen and it's used by many people, for example, whether it's in homes or cars or any type of sales, that they'll get a commitment that if I get this from you, will you commit to buying? And then at the flip side, they will themselves go back on the commitment many times on their side, but they will keep your commitment and your word. They may change the price on their end, but they said, you committed, you promised that if I do this, then you will accept. Many of these techniques are used because we don't want to go back on our word. The next major idea is that of social proof, a very powerful principle and technique that is used time and time again. One famous example of this is laughter in comedy sitcoms on TV. Think about the last time you saw TV and you saw a comedy on TV. You may notice the artificial laughter that is played on that TV show when it cues an individual to laugh. The reason that this comes about is social proof. The individual themselves, if that laughter was not there, they may not have laughed. But that laughter cues and triggers in the mind the shortcut that you should be laughing because other people are laughing. Another example of this is the bystander effect, a very well documented study in psychology and the psychology of the mind. That when in a public forum, the more people that there are and an incident takes place, such as an attack on an individual, the more people that are surrounding that incident, the less likely each individual person is to act. This is called the bystander effect. The reason for this is that the person begins to think that if someone was supposed to intervene, if someone was supposed to jump in, if someone was supposed to do something, they would have done it by now. So why should I do something? There must be a reason why other people are not getting involved. There must be a reason why other people are not doing anything. This is the bystander effect. So ask yourself the next time, should I be doing something? Is it the right thing to do? Or am I not doing something because other people are in this situation not doing anything? Or the flip side, am I buying this product or service only because everyone else is buying it and not because I necessarily need it? Ask yourself that. The next major idea is likability. We're much more likely to listen, comply, and actually follow people who we like. The author cites the halo effect, which is a well-documented phenomenon in psychology, that people who we actually find more attractive and appealing, we are more inclined to follow. This happens in politicians and presidential candidates, that when we see someone who is charismatic and someone who we find to be looking attractive, we listen to them more and we comply to them. Although there may be no underlying reason to do so. The only reason is the mind makes a shortcut that if this person is likable, therefore they must be good by default. Again, a way to protect yourself from this technique being used on you is to ask yourself, this person, and consider this person that you like, is it something that they want from you? Are they trying to get something out of you? Is there an ulterior motive? You don't necessarily have to question it every time, the author argues, but in certain situations of sales and things of this nature, it may be worth considering, is this genuine likability or is this a shortcut that the mind is creating? The last and the final idea is that of authority. Doctors, teachers, officers, all of these individuals, they have an impact on us. When they say something, we are conditioned to listen to them almost instantaneously, whether we give it a second thought or not. And the reality of this matter is that these individuals are humans just like us, and they may make many, many mistakes. The author cites the work of Stanley Milgram in the 1960s, a researcher who asked officers to order individuals to shock people. And without questioning, the individuals began to administer shock to innocent people. They didn't stop to question as to why that may be the case. Or another example of this, the author cites, are nurses when they were ordered by doctors to administer treatment to patients who had ear aches and ear infections, and the doctor told them to administer the treatment on the lower body. They actually listened, although they were nurses who should have known and would have known that they should not be administering it here. They didn't stop to ask the authority figure, the doctor in this case, well, it's an ear infection, why are we doing this? This is not normal protocol. They just simply listened. This is another example of authority. We many times listen to authority even though it may not make much sense. The author even further goes, says, it's not just even official authority, it's perceived authority. He gives the example of an actor who played a doctor on television for many years and was then hired by a company in order to act sort of as an individual who's an authority figure. The audience perceived that person to be a doctor in real life, when in reality they were not. They only played one on TV. Further than this, the author actually cites insights that lab coats and clothing has a big impact on whether a person is believable or not, and they establish the authority figure. Lab coats, in the cases of the studies of the 1960s, had a big impact on an individual actually complying with the rules and the orders that they were given. Another example the author goes and says is that of clergy. The clothing that they wear has an impact on people listening to them. Another example the author gives is that of officers. The clothing that a police officer wears, for example, has a big impact on whether people listen to them or not. This has just been a short summary of the 6 major ideas from the book Influence by Dr. Robert Cialdini, where he cites 6 particular mental shortcuts that our minds make: reciprocity, scarcity, consistency, social proof, likability, and authority. I hope these have been insightful to you and valuable, and have allowed you to reflect on any of these techniques being used on you, and the next time someone tries to use them, you'll be cognizant and mindful on them. A disclaimer, and one the author cites and one I want to share with you, is that if you choose to use any of these, please enable ethics in it and make sure that you are aware of what you're doing and you're doing the right thing. Don't do the wrong thing with respect to these tools, because it can be manipulative. But it's important to understand this, as Charlie Munger has said and as Guy Kawasaki says, to understand how our world operates and how our mind makes shortcuts. I hope you're interested in the book, and perhaps you'll pick it up and perhaps glean more insights. All the best to you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا محمد المصطفى وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this holy verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses that the prayer is an obligation upon the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed the prayer, the salah, for us, but not any prayer, a prayer that is in the manner that God has ordained, with the rules and method that He has taught and that has been shown by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who then told us, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Pray in the manner that you see me pray. So the prayer is not based on our whims and our fancies, on what we think should be in the prayer or what we think shouldn't be in the prayer. It is a fixed method. It is a ritual prayer it has moved away from its original meaning of a simple prayer, a dua, and it is in a definitive manner. And that manner has been explained to us in the Quran and mainly by the teachings of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Imams of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. In this session, I want to touch on a number of common mistakes that brothers and sisters make when performing their prayers. The very first issue is the recitation. We should do our level best to learn the proper recitations, to enunciate the Arabic letters and words in the correct Arabic manner, and to perform and follow the rules of tajweed that are necessary. It's a good idea, in fact, to run by your recitation with a local scholar, an alim, go to him or go to her and present your recitation. Say, this is the way I pray, this is the way I recite, so that you can ensure that you've got it right. We may sometimes think that we are doing it right, and we won't be realizing that there are mistakes that are being made. There isn't a shame in this by asking. The shame is only having performed your prayer in a particular way, but never having the motivation to learn how to pray according to the Sharia and according to the Islamic laws. There are a number of mistakes that I come across. The first mistake is from the very beginning when someone is saying in Takbiratul Ihram, Allahu Akbar. And rather than Allahu Akbar in haste, he or she will say Allahu Akbar. They will add a waw there, and that will change what the person is saying. Arabic is a language where we have to be very accurate. A small change could change the whole meaning of the word, and it will not be the dhikr of Allah's greatness, but it will be something else, or it could be nothing. It will be meaningless. We must ensure that we say Allahu Akbar in a proper manner. And normally the reason why we make these errors in recitation is because of hurrying in our prayers and being rushed in our prayers. If we take it easy, we pronounce everything correctly, we enunciate everything correctly, then inshallah our recitations will be correct and we'll be able to say these simple phrases in the correct manner. Another issue that we may come across is the differentiation between Hamzatul Qata and Hamzatul Wasl. Where is that Hamza to be recited? Where does it stick and where is it dropped? And which letters are what we call al-huruf al-shamsiyya, which are al-huruf al-qamariyya? When is that lam after the alif lam to be recited and when is it to be dropped? There are other rules related to idgham. Where is idgham necessary and where is it not necessary? So these rules are there, and it is worthwhile for us to be motivated to seek the reality of whether our prayer is valid or not, whether we are making mistakes or not. And inshallah, we will not be embarrassed by this, and we will seek greater ma'rifah and greater understanding of our prayers through learning and through seeking wisdom of our scholars who have taken their knowledge from the Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. And we shouldn't take these things personally as well. When we are seeking to correct these things, if there is a mistake happening, then be grateful that someone is correcting you. Another common mistake is in the recitation of the two surahs in the first and second rak'at, especially for the Fajr, Maghrib and Isha prayers. But when offered individually by a man, these two surahs, Suratul Hamd and the second surah of your choosing, it must be recited aloud as an obligatory precaution. It cannot be whispered, it cannot be very quiet, it has to be recited aloud. The Arabic word is al-jahr. And this, in regards to the prayers of Dhuhr and Asr, those surahs are to be recited quietly as an obligatory precaution for both men and women, except on Fridays, in which it is recommended for men to recite the two surahs in the Dhuhr prayer aloud. And when I say aloud, it is something that is based on convention, and it is based on the norm that someone can say that this person is reciting out aloud. It doesn't mean that everybody in the room hears him or everyone in the masjid hears him, but that it is something that is audible, something that is coming out in an audible fashion. And it's not something that is quiet, that is whispering, which is the opposite of al-jahr, and that is called ikhfat. And ikhfat is necessary in Dhuhr and Asr. So we must differentiate between these two prayers, these two categories of prayers, the prayers which are jahriya and the prayers which are ikhfatiya. The ikhfatiya prayers are the Dhuhr and Asr prayers, and the jahriya prayers are the Fajr, Maghrib and Isha prayers. If by mistake or by forgetfulness or by ignorance we don't follow these rulings in regards to the recitation, this is overlooked. The prayers don't need to be repeated. However, if we do this purposely, then our prayers are invalid and they will need to be repeated. When you recite anything in the prayer, it needs to be recited when you are stable. This is another mistake that is made quite often, that people are rushing and they are saying things and reciting things in motion. When the recitation of the dhikr in the ruku', for instance, is recited, it should be when one is in that ruku' position, bowing down, he's stable in that position. There is no more motion of heading towards ruku' or moving away from ruku', and he recites it then. It is not sufficient that we recite it on the way to ruku' and we recite a part of it getting up from ruku'. And the same thing with any of the things that we are to recite in the prayer. It has to be recited while we are in that position and stable in that position. And we shouldn't, for example, start raising our heads from ruku' or sujood before we complete the dhikr of the ruku' or the sujood. And this is with, of course, the one exception, that when we recite bihawlillahi wa quwwatihi aqumu wa aq'ud, this is to be recited when we are standing up for the next rak'ah. That is the only thing that is to be recited when we are in motion. Otherwise, everything else has to be recited when we are stable and still in the positions that are prescribed in the prayer. And one more common mistake that I wish to mention in this session is that the standing after the ruku' and the sitting after each of the prostrations, we've got to ensure that that is done properly. So when we stand up from ruku', we should stand and be stable and then go down to sujood and prostration. We shouldn't just pop our heads up from ruku' and immediately go down, as if it is one continuous motion. Now, for a moment we have to be standing still. And the same thing after the two prostrations. We should sit up after the first prostration, and before getting into the second prostration, we should make sure that we have entered the sitting position, we have been stable in that sitting position, and then we go down. And then the same thing after the second prostration. We shouldn't stand straight up from the prostration. If there's no tashahhud, if there's no sitting after the second prostration for tashahhud, it doesn't mean that we can stand up straight from the prostration, that position of sujood. We should, even after the second prostration, when there's no tashahhud, we should sit for a moment and then stand up and raise ourselves to the standing position of the next rak'ah. And as I said before, that we tend to overlook these things, or maybe we know it, but we fail to apply these rules because of the way that we are praying. We're praying in a rush, we are praying in a hurried way and in haste, and due to doing so without focusing, without realizing, we can make these mistakes. So inshallah, we should be more focused in our prayers, focus on what we are doing in prayer. This is not simply a ritual that we go through. It should be something deeper than that. It should have meaning in our lives. It should be the engine of our lives. This prayer is something that we can use to ascend to greater heights. It is a mi'raj of the mu'min. And inshallah, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it a mi'raj for us. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our prayers, our a'mal, our good deeds in all manners and forms. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to overlook our mistakes, to overlook our misconceptions, and give us greater and greater understanding of how we can and should undertake our responsibilities. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.